I haven't smoked cannabis in 3 months. And when I was smoking daily, I remember thinking and being kind of afraid that I was going to not be the same person, that I wasn't going to feel the same, that I wasn't going to be happy, that I wasn't going to be able to survive. But there's this moment when I stopped smoking where I did feel kind of a little bit of withdrawal that didn't feel good. It was maybe a day or two. And then everything felt just kind of the same, felt kind of normal. And I will say that when I smoke, I usually smoke like the bare minimum to regulate my day. So I smoke like a very small amount. I have this kind of bar that I set where I like to feel good. It's not necessarily high as fuck. It's not necessarily nothing. But it's something where I'm able to I have this one hitter that I will just pack, which is, I'm trying to think of what I could compare it to, but it's, just a very small amount that could fit on, I don't know what to compare it to, but very small. Unless I showed you the one hitter, or if you know what that is, it's a very small amount. And that I usually maybe get one or two hits from, and that's it. And that makes my day feel good. I feel relaxed. I feel more engaged. And when I stopped, I thought I wasn't going to feel that. Now, I will say that I have less patience for ridiculous things. For example, ridiculous questions, or things that I would giggle at when I was high. I'm kind of just about when I'm not high, but it isn't really that big of a difference. And I really thought it would be bigger. So I haven't smoked in 3 months, and what I've learned is that it didn't actually change my life one way or the other. So, like I said, I was kind of afraid that it would be this huge thing that I was just not going to be able to live without, or that it was going to make me a completely different person. But I just don't feel it or see it. The thing about smoking is that, like everything else, you have to pay attention to what you are doing and what your body is feeling. Just like if you were drinking, there's a difference between taking one shot and taking 10. There's a difference between taking 2 hits a day and taking 10. Ultimately, it comes down to how you want to feel, what your bar is at, and how your body feels while you're doing it. There's a point, if you're a heavy smoker, there's a point where you're not even smoking to get high. You're just smoking because it's a habit. You're just hanging around with friends and you're like, let's pass around another hit, but you don't really feel like you're getting higher. It's just more of a thing you're just kind of doing. So you kind of have to set your own limit of what you want to feel throughout your day. This goes for anything when it comes to mindfulness. So I've set that limit, and sometimes I smoke more, sometimes I'll smoke less. It just depends on the situation. But because it's such a low bar, it wasn't something that hurt me or that felt too intense to not do for the last 3 months. It was just, something that slightly improved my day at the time. But I don't know how it doesn't seem to be to have that much of an impact. And I also will say that there are times where you want to smoke and just enjoy the day, and that's fine. And that feels good too. And there definitely is a difference in the sensation. I'm not saying weed doesn't do anything. What I am saying is when you are setting that intention and being mindful with the chemicals that are impacting your body, and you realize it doesn't take that much to feel good, whether it's to take a shot or whether to take a hit or to have one cigarette or to eat one piece of chocolate or to have one tiny coffee or whatever it is, whatever chemical you're using, whether those are from something you're eating or something you're doing. Those chemicals are being released no matter what, and it doesn't really matter the form. They're now living in your body. When you're intentional about those things, and you can start to pay attention to how your body feels, it becomes less of a burden to when there's a change in that habit, and it becomes less of a financial burden because you're not spending a lot of money on something you know you don't really need to regulate. But it just becomes more, I don't know, you feel more in control of what you're doing because you see this as medicinal, as taking the correct dosage versus as a habit that you can't control. And when it comes to mindfulness and cannabis, it's not just how much you smoke, it's what type you smoke, it's when you smoke, it's there's so much more involved in it that if you're not paying attention, it can be very easy to overconsume in a way that's going to hurt you. So paying attention, like I repeat this because it's important, but this applies to so many things than just smoking. As you're paying attention to what you're putting in your body, what you're doing with your body, and how your body feels, you can then make better decisions about what you need to do to improve, what you need to change, so that you can continue to feel good about what it is you're doing. I consider myself like a hippie, and one of the reasons is because of the stoner aspect of it. I love the vibe of it. I love how I feel when I'm high. I love when I smoke is how I should say that, because being high, like it's so weird, like somebody smoking one cigarette, you wouldn't be like, hey, are you high? But they kind of are on tobacco and the nicotine of it. But there's not, anyway, that's a whole different story. But what I am trying to say is I like the community. I like that I can feel more at ease around people who I know enjoy cannabis. It just feels like it's kinder. It feels like I don't have to worry about the judgment. It feels like I don't have to hide who I am. And like I said, I don't smoke that much to where it's a problem. And I say that because people who don't smoke see it as very black and white. Either you smoke cannabis and you're a stoner who stays in the couch all day, or you don't. But it's a spectrum, and not just in what you're smoking and how much you're smoking and things like that, but also in your activity level. Like, everyone is different. I have found in the past, because again, it's been a couple months, that I can be more creative. It doesn't make you more creative. What it does is it breaks down the walls that keep you from being creative. Those things that say, that would be a dumb idea. You shouldn't mix those paints, or you shouldn't cut that t-shirt, or you shouldn't do X, Y, or Z. It removes that and says, you should try it. And that has actually carried over within the last 3 months and has allowed me to be more, without smoking, be more creative in the things that I make every day. And it has almost released the fear of creating. I used to be so afraid of cutting a piece of paper or marking up a piece of like a white sheet of paper and messing it up, because then I would have to throw it away if I messed up. And now I keep going. I see what that mess up, in quotations, leads to. And a big part of that was the release of that fear of creating that cannabis gave me. And not just creatively, but when I was trying to process my emotions and heal myself from trauma, cannabis was one of those things that allowed me to go there and think about those issues and think about how I was feeling, and allow me to process them a little bit better without fear. and with love. One of the things I say is that I like to live my life with love and ease. And that's really what cannabis is about, is like this feeling of wholeness, this feeling of love, this feeling of it's not that big of a deal. We can like, it just has so it can be such a powerful tool if people use it mindfully. And there are instances, and I think this is where people who are anti-cannabis really shine, is like they try to focus on the harmful effects of it because of the harmful examples of it that they see in their own lives, which is fine. We all have our own perspectives. But if you're not familiar with the product and the plant, you only see it one way, but it literally grows from the planet and has these effects that our brains actually have receptors for and can process. And when you remove the bind that you put on yourself from trying new things and from experiencing what the world has to offer, you then, I mean, obviously do the opposite. You open yourself up to what exists, and you open yourself up to what you can create, whether that's creating something tangible or creating new space in your head for healing. And it all comes down to this mindfulness piece of it. Like I said, it's very easy to load bowl after bowl and get super high. And if that's the vibe you're going for, that's the vibe, and that's fine. It's fun to do that, especially when you're around people that you care about and love. But if you're noticing a pattern in your life and you're starting to see that there are negative consequences, it doesn't have to be smoke or not smoke. It can be, what is my level and can I bring that down a little bit? And it can have pretty cool benefits, not just saving money because you're not buying so much weed, but also that you're able to focus a little bit better and pay attention to your body a little bit more because you're not so distracted. You're able to pay attention to what's happening. You're able to make better decisions. You're able to enjoy yourself. You're able to remember more things. And it just, the whole reason, not the whole reason, but one of the reasons I like to talk about this stuff is because all of the reasons that people stigmatize cannabis can be applied to a lot of other things that are legal everywhere. And we can talk about, why it's illegal and the whole capitalism of it all, but that's a different topic and a different voice note. But getting back to the point, when you are paying attention to what you are putting in your body, especially if it has chemicals whatever you're putting in your body has chemicals that can influence the way that you think and the way that you see the world. It's important to live in that moment and see those ways and ask yourself, how can this be better? How can this feel better? I mean, ultimately, that's what we want, right? To feel good. And I'm not saying that weed is the only thing that's going to make you feel good. I'm saying when it can elevate a moment, it can elevate an experience, it can make something boring a little bit better. That list of chores you have to do can be a little bit more elevated. It's a really cool plant that I think when you incorporate the mindfulness of it and be more intentional with what you're smoking, how much you're smoking, how you're smoking. There's a lot of different ways and a lot of different effects. It can be pretty therapeutic, pretty inspiring, pretty a lot of things. But in making this voice note, I also felt that it would not be right if I didn't smoke. So after 3 months, I'm going to smoke for the first time, and I'm excited, a little bit nervous, but I'm excited because I love this plant. I love what it does. And before I smoke, because I don't know what the effects are, I don't know how long this voice note is going to last after that, I wanted to say two things, or talk about two mindful media is what I call them. One is if you are a stoner who likes to laugh and who likes to think, there's a show on Netflix called Disjointed with Kathy Bates. It's really funny, really deep. If you pay attention to the storyline, if you pay attention to what's being said, it's not only ridiculous and funny, but it's also really thought-provoking. Also, something that really helped me when I was starting to feel shame for my cannabis use was this podcast called Great Moments in Weed History. And the host basically talks about cannabis in history and different stories. And the first one, it's on Spotify. And if you go to like the oldest one, the first one is about Willie Nelson. And we hear these stories about, on the podcast, you hear these stories about people, influential people who have used cannabis to create, and different people who have, you learn stories about how cannabis came to be in different areas. You learn the history of it all in different ways from different stories and through different perspectives. And I think that was a really healing journey for me. So Disjointed and Great Moments in Weed History. And so, yeah, with that said, cheers.